Hello BookTube. Regular viewers of this channel will no doubt know that one of my reading projects is to go back and reread the classics I read when I was younger. Which brings me to Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, which I read when I was in high school because, of course I did. I think, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think just about every American has encountered this book in high school, right? You know, if you're an American and you went to high school, let me know what grade you read this book in, when you encountered it. I'd be very surprised if any North Americans out there got through high school without reading this book. I'm not sure how popular it is in the rest of the world. But again, let me know in the comments. Where are you from? When did you read this book? Did you read this book? Etc. But my basic assumption is that most people out there have already read this book, which I guess raises the question of who is this video for, right? If we've already all read this book. I don't know. One of my quirks is that I make it a habit to review everything I read, whether I have anything intelligent to say about it or not. So I'm going to give some thoughts on this book, but I'm probably going to assume that most of us have already read this book, and maybe some of us haven't read it recently, so I'll maybe remind you of some things you've forgotten about it. If by any chance you haven't read this book, stop the video now, get the book. It's a very thin book, as you can see. It's only 100 pages. It reads very smoothly. You can read it in half a day. It is worth the read. It's worth your time. So I'm going to be spoiling some stuff in this video. So if you haven't read it, shut the video off now, get this book and read it. Okay. So yeah, my history with this book. I know I just said that I read this book in high school. That actually wasn't completely accurate. It was read to me in high school. So my 10th grade English teacher read this book to us a chapter at a time, just reading it out loud and us sitting and listening. And I think that was a very good way to encounter it because you can't skip over any parts if somebody is reading it to you. You are forced to pay attention to all of the words and get them at a natural pace. You know, because sometimes when you read it yourself, you get fall into the temptation to go a little bit faster, skip over parts, etc. I was talking to a coworker of mine this past week about this book, Mice and Men, and he said, yeah, I don't remember it. He said, I read it in high school, but we had to read so much stuff in high school, and I was just reading it fast to get it done, and I don't remember it at all. And yeah, maybe that's some people's experience, but I definitely feel like I remember it very well from our 10th grade teacher reading it out to us. And of course it helps that she had a good dramatic voice and was able to read out the dialogue in a good dramatic way, etc. Since that time, when I was teaching in Cambodia, one of the curriculums I was teaching, the students had to read this book. Not the original version, because they were learning English as a second language. So they read a simplified version of it, which had all the same plot beats, but had a simplified vocabulary. So when I was out in Cambodia teaching this book, I encountered it again in that format. So between feeling like I remember it very well from high school and also teaching a simplified version of this book in Cambodia, I probably didn't need to come back and reread it, but it was on my mother's bookshelf. I decided to borrow it. I needed something small to take with me to work, to read in my lunch breaks. I picked this up and yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, I probably didn't need to read it again, but yeah, Steinbeck's style is so readable. I mean, just right from the first few pages, right from the first page, you get sucked into that prose immediately, and the pages turn very effortlessly. I've also consulted the Wikipedia page for this book, and I'll be drawing on some of the information I got from Wikipedia. According to Wikipedia, it appears that this book was later turned into a stage play, and by later I mean almost immediately after it was published. It was published, I believe, in 1937. And when Steinbeck wrote it, he was already thinking about making it into a play. And so it was written with an eye to the stage. So according to Wikipedia, it's written in 3 acts. There are 6 chapters in the book, 2 chapters for an act, and it's very tightly written in that regard. And certainly the book is very dialogue driven. So you're reading and it's just a lot of pages of the characters talking to each other, and the dialogue of the book is very memorable and very lifelike. Like you can picture these characters so clearly in your head when you're reading it. The dialogue that they're saying back and forth to each other sounds just like the way these men would actually talk. According to Wikipedia, this book was based on Steinbeck's own experiences, and a number of the characters in here are either people he knew or they're composites of people he knew. And that would help to explain why these characters seem so real when you're reading this book. Right, so very readable, and some great dialogue in this book. So the book was published in 1937, and it's a book about the Depression and the types of people who are working on ranches during a depression. The title of Mice and Men comes from a poem by the famous Scottish poet Robert Burns, which is, I believe, called To a Mouse. This is a very famous poem in Scotland. Robert Burns is like the national poet of Scotland. So if you ever have any Scottish friends, no doubt they'll be able to tell you a lot about Robert Burns. But anyways, in the poem, if you're not familiar with it, it's a guy plowing the field for his farm. And in the course of plowing, he notices that he's accidentally destroyed a mouse's house. And so he writes a little poem in which he's addressing the mouse. And he says, you know, dear little mouse, I'm sorry that I destroyed your house. I know that you were preparing for the winter. And, you know, you knew a cold winter was coming in. You were preparing your house. You were getting it all stored with everything you would need for the winter. And here I come with my plow and I completely destroy it. But then he said, but you know, mouse, you and I are not so different. I also have a lot of plans for my life that also completely get messed up by fortune and fate. And so he says, you know, the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. And that's where the title comes here, of Mice and Men. And immediately, within the first few pages of the book, we get the symbolism here of a dead mouse, which one of the characters, Lenny, is carrying. So we get... that dead mouse does not actually symbolize Robert Burns' poem per se, but immediately, within the first few pages, we get men and we get a mouse right in the opening scene. And then certainly by the end of the book, we can see where the best laid plans of mice and men go awry when the plans that these characters have made for their lives just completely crumbles around them. So it's a very well done, well crafted book in terms of everything fitting together neatly. It's a book where there's also a lot of classic setup and payoff, and where there's a lot of foreshadowing in a way that when you read the book for the first time, you don't necessarily know where it's going. But when you read the book for the second time, you can see very clearly, okay, so this is setting up what's going to happen later. This is foreshadowing what's going to happen later. This is symbolic of how the book is going to end. So you can just see all that very clearly, which is no doubt one of the reasons why this is almost always taught in American high schools. It's just a very tight example of a very well-crafted book. Not to mention it's short. And, if you're going to teach anything in American high schools, you need to have it short. So this edition here I'm holding is 107 pages, not particularly small print, kind of a small book compared to, here, let me hold up another book for comparison's sake. You can see how much smaller this is than a normal book. So yeah, perfect for the attention span of a high schooler. Can easily be read in an afternoon. That being said, because of any number of reasons, it's also a very controversial book. And the most obvious reason is the way that these characters are swearing to each other. I believe my high school English teacher told me, I've not looked this up to verify this, but for Grapes of Wrath, one of Steinbeck's other classics, his editor came back to him and said, clean it up. Just clean up all the dirty language in the book. And Steinbeck said, no, that's the way they talk, so I'm not going to clean it up. Now, of course, nowadays, it's a little bit tame. I mean, there's no F-bombs or anything like that. But there's a lot of, Christ, Jesus, goddamn, that kind of stuff, which would have been offensive back in its day. And it is still offensive nowadays in certain circles. That being said, I went to a Christian high school where this was read out to us, but, perhaps not without a little bit of nervousness on the part of the teachers, etc., that they felt the need to discuss it and to justify it with us. This is the way people actually talked. But yeah, it's in addition to being ubiquitous in American high schools, it's also quite often banned in American high schools because of the dialogue, for one thing, and for other reasons, the ending. Actually, one of the things which I wonder about, and if you've read the book, of course, the plot revolves around Lenny, who is mentally impaired with some sort of unnamed mental impairment. And throughout the book is portrayed as childlike. And, back in the 1930s, I'm sure there was a lot less sensitivity around that. You could be just like, oh yeah, of course, he's mentally impaired, a big dummy, that's just how he is. Nowadays, I think there might be, well, I don't know. Could you write this book nowadays? I feel like you couldn't without maybe more of an acknowledgement of exactly what Lenny's symptoms were, how he would be treated, or how he would be neurodivergent and intelligent in some ways other people weren't. I don't know. Or am I misreading the situation? Let me know what you think in the comments. According to Wikipedia, the character of Lenny was based on somebody Steinbeck actually knew. Somebody who also came to a tragic end. He killed the foreman on a ranch when the foreman fired one of his friends, and ended up being put in an insane asylum. So, yeah, and of course, if you've read the book, you know that Lenny in this book also comes to a tragic end. A little bit of a different story, but that doesn't end well in either case. Yeah, what else is there to say about this book? The book is about Lenny and George and the relationship they have with each other. But it's not only about Lenny and George. It's a bit of an ensemble cast. Once they get to the ranch and they meet some of the other people, we find out that a lot of people on this ranch are not doing that well. They're lonely, they're hurting, they desperately want some sort of validation, or they want some sort of security in their lives. There is the black guy on the ranch who is going out of his mind with loneliness because he's not allowed to socialize with the rest of the guys in the evening. He has to stay in his own room where all he has is books. He talks about how that kind of isolation will drive you crazy without anybody to talk to. There's also, what's his name? I'm forgetting the names now. The old guy, whose name is... Candy. Yeah, Candy. Who is also lonely. He's aging out of the job, and he knows he's going to be useless quite soon. He doesn't have any security. There, of course, is Curly's wife, who, yeah, I was going to say at one point that perhaps this book is a little bit misogynistic in the way it portrays Curly's wife as just this mischievous woman. But as I reread it and got to the end, I was reminded that by the time we get to the end of the story, we are brought along to sympathize with her as well. And how she is also driven to what she does by this just loneliness that torments her. Loneliness and disappointed dreams. So according to Wikipedia, there's a quote from Steinbeck, something to the effect of like, literature helps bring about understanding of people. And by understanding of people, it helps us to live in harmony with each other. Because when you get through the end of this book, you are able to completely sympathize with all of the characters and see how that though they may do things which at first seem to be bad, that they're all driven by this desperate need to connect and this loneliness and this, just desire for validation and human connection. Almost all the characters. Curly, the bully with the Napoleon complex in this book, is not redeemed at the end. By the end of the book, we don't see any redeemable qualities for him. That may be a flaw in the construction of the book, or I don't know, what do you think? But aside from Curly, who arguably needs to be an antagonist to drive the plot forward, the rest of the characters, we sympathize with them, and we want them to get a happy ending, but there's no happy ending for these characters. They have hopes, they have dreams, they have plans, but the best laid plans of mice and men often go awry, and then by the end of the book, we see what has happened to their plans. So I don't know, just a final comment to say that rereading this book was a pleasure. Even though, like I said, I had taught a version of this book in Cambodia, I knew exactly what the plot points and the plot beats were. Those were still very fresh in my mind. But just reading through the dialogue and seeing these characters talk to each other and just seeing the way the dialogue snaps and the very realistic, seems to me very realistic tone of the dialogue made me turn these pages with pleasure. So if you, like me, have read this book in high school and think, I don't need to revisit that, I still remember it quite well. I mean, maybe you don't need to revisit it, but you won't be wasting your time. It's a pleasure to read, and it's a pleasure to reread. So consider picking it up if you haven't picked this up recently. And once again, let me know in the comments what your experience with this book was. Is there anyone out there any American who didn't read it in high school? And if not, why not? And if you did read it, what did you think about it at the time? If you're from another country, was this book require reading in your high school, or how did you encounter it, etc. So that's all for today, BookTube. Thank you very much, and see you next time.